So the trailer for The Irishman has finally been released. The movie is highly anticipated and is the first to feature Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino and Harvey Keitel in the same film. It concerns Frank the Irishman Sheeran, a hitman for the Italian mafia, under mob boss Russell Bufalino, and who worked with and became close friends with Jimmy Hoffa, the Teamsters union leader who had close ties to the mob. Eventually, the relationship between Hoffa and the mafia became strained, with Sheeran in the middle, who is eventually forced to make a difficult choice. Frank Sheeran is played by Robert De Niro, Hoffa by Al Pacino, Bufalino by Joe Pesci, and Harvey Keitel is playing another mob boss in a smaller role, Angelo Bruno, who was a close friend of Bufalino, but he was not featured in the trailer. Technically, this is the second teaser and the first promotional video that features actual footage from the film, so there will most likely be at least 2 more trailers to come where we'll get more scenes to look at and a better idea of the story. What I wanted to do was go through the trailer, almost shot for shot, taking a look at different scenes and guessing what is going on, and taking a look at a few details I noticed hiding in plain sight. In case you don't know, I've read the book the movie is based on, called I Heard You Paint Houses. I've read one of the earlier leaked draft scripts of the film, and I have followed developments of the movie closely, so I know quite a bit about it. In other words, I'm not going to be making wild guesses, meaning if you're wanting to go into the film knowing very little about it, this probably isn't the video for you, as I'm going to be talking about the events in the film quite a bit, though avoiding the more major spoilers. So the first shot in the trailer shows someone, maybe Frank Sheeran, walking into the Villa de Roma restaurant, which will feature heavily in the movie. This is where Frank Sheeran was properly introduced to Russell Bufalino, whom he had met previously during a chance encounter when Sheeran's truck broke down. This is Bufalino's main hangout in the film, and it's where he introduces Sheeran to Jimmy Hoffa over the phone. Sheeran wanted to move on from being a truck driver, and Bufalino gave him this brilliant opportunity with someone very high up the career ladder, which is what's happening here. This is the first time we see Al Pacino in the film, over the phone to Frank Sheeran. The next few shots of the trailer could be parts of a short montage of sorts, as described in the script I read, where Sheeran narrates to us a basic summary of who Hoffa was and what he was all about. I'm hoping we do get quite a bit of Hoffa screaming at large crowds and it isn't just reduced to montages, because I think it would be a good opportunity for Pacino to show us he's still got it, and shouting matches and long-winded speeches where he chews the scenery are some of the things he's best at. The next part of the trailer, around 30 seconds in, is one I find really interesting. Firstly because of its aesthetics. Pesci looks like an absolute boss here, so cool and menacing wearing those big dark funky glasses indoors. The fast whip pan of the camera and the guy on his right whispering in his ear, along with all the people talking and partying, is juxtaposed by Pesci's stillness and quiet intensity. He has the aura of Russell Bufalino down to a T. This scene is during Frank Sheeran's appreciation night, and I'm guessing that just before the camera moved towards them, it was showing Jimmy Hoffa, perhaps talking with Frank Sheeran or with his own family, all happy and jolly, and then the camera moves to these mobsters, scheming and contemplating. This is set during a time in which the mob was rattled by some of Hoffa's comments about exposing the Teamsters' dealings with the mafia, and they are starting to consider whether it would be beneficial if Hoffa wasn't around anymore. When you look at the shot this way, it becomes much more sinister. And by the way, the 2 men beside Bufalino here have such interesting histories. Seeing these 3 top-tier gangsters all in the same shot is so cool. I talk about them both quite a bit on my channel if you're interested. If you click on my profile and go to the section that says The Irishman Profiles, I provide a brief breakdown of each of the main characters. The guy on Bufalino's left is Tony Salerno, also known as Fat Tony. Fat Tony probably had the quintessential mobster look. If you think of a mafioso, and you're thinking of a fat man in a dark suit and a hat, always with a cigar in his hand. That's Fat Tony. Here's a real photo of him. This guy took something like a 100-year prison sentence in the end, and he was one of the highest ranking mobsters in the entire mob. He's even done business with Donald Trump, although it is believed that the FBI exaggerated his importance to get him a bigger sentence, as technically he wasn't the boss of his family, but was a front boss for the real one, Vincent Gigante, or Vinny the Chin. Anyway, after a bit of beef with one of Salerno's captains, Bufalino and Sheeran have to come to Salerno to ease tensions. The beef is started by the man on Bufalino's right, who is one of the most important characters in the entire film, because he is essentially the guy that starts the snowball effect to Hoffa's demise. Anthony Provenzano, or Tony Pro, played by Stephen Graham, a gangster so touchy he'd kill you just for looking at him. This guy does in the film what he's doing now, whispering into the ear of powerful people about how much better things would be if Hoffa was out of the picture. He's what we call here in the UK a complete shit stirrer, a first-class wanker. He hates Hoffa, despite them both once upon a time being on good terms, because when the two were temporarily in prison, Hoffa said he could not help Pro get his Teamster's pension back, something which was forfeit because he was sent to prison. If you're quick, you'll spot the altercation Hoffa and Pro have in prison. Here. And here's something interesting. Stephen Graham said on the Jonathan Ross show that he improvised in one of the takes where he would approach Al Pacino and immediately he flung his ice cream off the table, which caused a startled reaction from Al Pacino and received praise from Martin Scorsese. It looks like they left that in. They also show in the trailer the second fight the two have, where a meeting is set up so the two can reconcile their differences, but it ends up with them both tumbling to the floor amid a flurry of punches and kicks. When Hoffa tries to regain control of the Teamsters after losing it to Frank Fitzsimmons, his second in command, one of the people who he needs on his side is Provenzano, because Provenzano is also a powerful Teamsters union member. But Provenzano now hates his guts, and he causes a lot of serious trouble for Hoffa. Next we have Bufalino giving Sheeran a ring, of which only 3 exist, which became one of Sheeran's most valued possessions that he always kept with him. It's still Frank Sheeran Appreciation Night in this shot, but it's a little later in this one. This is the Joe Gallo hit, where Sheeran says in the book I Heard You Paint Houses that he was ordered to kill gangster Joe Gallo, a much disputed claim. The reason he was ordered to kill him is because Gallo botched a hit on another mobster, Joe Colombo, in that A, he left him alive but crippled, and B, he did it in front of his family. There are bits and pieces of the Colombo hit shown in the trailer. You can tell because of all the Italian flags, as it happened during an Italian-American Civil Rights League demonstration. Also, that close-up of the gun is also from the same scene, and you can tell because one of the hands that is holding it is black, and Gallo used an African American to carry out the Colombo hit. Again, I talk about this in more detail in my Joe Gallo and Joe Colombo profile videos. We next see a shot of De Niro leaving home at night for a bit of the old ultra-violence. He's spotted by one of his daughters, probably Peggy, who deep down knows that her father was up to no good, a plotline that gains prominence towards the end of the film, and we see a shot of the adult Peggy, played by Anna Paquin, talking to her father. The trailer then shows us some quick-fire shots of numerous different things happening, like weapon transportation, which could mean that the suggestion that the Mafia were involved with the CIA to kill JFK, which was in the book but left out of the script I read, does remain in the film. And it would be very interesting to see how audiences react to that if it is the case. There are a few shots also of people campaigning for Kennedy's presidency, which could be part of a montage which shows how his brother, Robert Kennedy, became district attorney and setting up his war with Jimmy Hoffa and the mob. There are also some very cool shots of Hoffa's court battles, journalists, cameramans, bodyguards and lawyers almost trampling on top of each other. It looks like these kind of scenes will have a lot of energy and boisterousness. This next scene, a very cool one as it's the first we've seen Al Pacino and Joe Pesci together, is also during Frank Sheeran Appreciation Night, where Bufalino tries to convince Hoffa to step down in his attempts to retake the Teamsters for his own sake as well as anyone else's. This is again a part of the film where tensions are seriously threatening to boil over, and Hoffa refuses to take a hint, much as Bufalino tries to give it. This shot, I think, explains itself. If you know the story, you know there's only one part that has a plane in it. If you don't know the story, well, just ask me in the comments what this is about and I'll explain. The trailer then shows us what looks like a fist fight in a courtroom, with Hoffa screaming, "Get that gun out of his hand." Of course, this could be dialogue from a different scene, but I think this is in reference to the legend that someone pulled a gun on Hoffa in court, and not his bodyguards, his muscle, but Hoffa himself charged down the attacker and wrestled the gun out of his hand, as mentioned in the book I Heard You Paint Houses. Oh, and by the way, see that guy in the fight with the blonde hair? This is the only shot in the trailer of Jesse Plemons, who plays Charles O'Brien, who was something of an adopted son of Hoffa's. Some of the more interesting shots from the trailer that follow is Bufalino and Sheeran's car ride across state, which takes up a lot of the runtime in the film, and an older Sheeran at a funeral. Whose is it? I'd guess maybe his wife's. There's this blink and you'll miss it shot of a young De Niro punching someone. There's probably a few people this could be, but I'm gonna guess, going off of the script I read, that this is a deadbeat guy that owes Skinny Razor money. Skinny Razor being one of Sheeran's earlier bosses, and Sheeran takes him to Razor, meaning that guy with the glasses in the corner might be Bobby Cannavale, who plays Skinny Razor. Then there's this shot of a man getting whacked by being strangled with a piano wire in a car. Again, because this is a classic mob-style hit, this could be in reference to a number of things, but it could be the way the movie starts. I mentioned in my video of the opening scene that they show 3 people getting killed. One on the street, one in a kitchen, and one in a car. Maybe this is one of those, the one in the car, although in the script it's described as with a gun instead of a wire. This next shot of De Niro looking solemn in a car wash is really interesting. Why is it in slow motion? Why does he look so downbeat? Well, if you look carefully at his car, in the corner it shows a hotline that also says, "Where's Jimmy Hoffa?" So this must be during or after 1975 when Hoffa disappeared, and Sheeran promised his family that he would do what he could to find him. Given De Niro's expression and the slow motion, maybe the scene is part of his grieving and guiltiness, perhaps the car wash symbolism of him trying to cleanse himself of his sins or something. So I'll leave it there for now. That was a pretty long look at the trailer. The book was a delightful read, and it looks really cool seeing it brought to life by Scorsese and this incredible cast he's working with. The Irishman is set to premiere on the 27th of September at the New York Film Festival. Thanks for watching.